CIMC, Dongfang, CXIC, three companies that together manufacture more than 80% of the world's shipping containers. And if you include the smaller firms operating in the same country, the number becomes even more astonishing. China now produces around 96% of the world's dry cargo containers, and essentially 100% of refrigerated containers. That means the physical backbone of global trade, the standardized box that made globalization possible, is almost entirely built in one country by a handful of companies. So how did this happen? Why don't the United States, Germany, or Japan make containers anymore? Why didn't India or Vietnam take over when manufacturing shifted there? The answer isn't just cheap labor or government subsidies. Those matter, but they're not the full story. The real reason is something deeper, almost mathematical, an economic trap that makes it nearly impossible for anyone else to compete. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to the beginning. Shipping containers were invented in the United States. In 1956, Malcolm McLean launched the Ideal X, a converted oil tanker carrying standardized metal boxes. It was a revolutionary idea. Instead of unloading cargo piece by piece, you could move entire containers directly from ships to trucks and trains. It slashed costs, sped up trade, and reshaped the global economy. At first, these containers were built in American factories. But manufacturing has gravity. It follows materials, capital, and production networks. And over the next few decades, container production migrated. In the 1960s, Japan took the lead. In the 1970s and 80s, South Korea became the hub. And by the 1990s, container manufacturing had landed firmly in China. Most people assume this was just another story of companies chasing cheap labor. But labor is only part of the equation. The real story is steel. A 40-foot shipping container is basically 4 tons of metal, special weather-resistant steel that rusts on the surface to protect the structure underneath. Steel accounts for roughly 60% of the total cost of a container. And today, China produces more steel than the rest of the world combined. In 2024, China produced over 1 billion tons of crude steel, more than half of global output. India, the second largest producer, made a fraction of that. The United States, Japan, and Russia together still didn't come close. Now think about what that means. If you want to build containers in Europe or the United States, you likely have to import Chinese steel, pay tariffs, pay shipping costs, build the container, then ship that empty container back to China, because China produces more manufactured goods than the next several countries combined. It's a logistics loop that fails at every step. Steel is heavy. Containers are heavy. Shipping empty metal boxes across the world just to bring them back filled with goods is economically absurd. The geography of steel dictates the geography of the container. So who are the companies that mastered this system? First, there's China International Maritime Containers, CIMC. Founded in 1980 in Shenzhen as a joint venture with a Danish shipping company, CIMC started small, but over 4 decades, it grew into a manufacturing titan. In 2024, CIMC reported record revenues of over $24 billion. That year alone, it sold nearly 3.5 million dry containers as global trade rebounded. Statistically speaking, if you see 2 containers side by side at a port, CIMC probably built one of them. They control roughly half of the global container market. Then there's Dongfang, often referred to as DFIC. They're the quiet giant, less flashy, less talked about, but massive. They control around 25 to 30% of the market and are often the preferred supplier for state-backed shipping lines. And finally, CIXIC, the third player. Smaller than the other 2 but still enormous, holding about 10 to 15% of the market. Together, these 3 companies don't just dominate the industry, they are the industry. But what makes them so hard to compete with isn't just scale, it's technology. CIMC has pioneered what they call black light factories production lines. So automated, they can literally run in the dark. Robots weld steel with laser precision. AI systems inspect welds and detect microscopic defects. Human workers oversee processes that look more like automotive assembly lines than traditional metal fabrication shops. Container manufacturing used to be manual, dirty, and labor-intensive. These companies turned it into a high-tech industrial machine. And then there's the role of the Chinese state. In the West, a private company might go bankrupt during a downturn. Investors pull out. Factories shut down. Capacity disappears. In China, these giants are backed by state banks and policy support. When demand collapses, they can keep operating. When trade rebounds, they're ready. That stability is priceless in a cyclical industry like shipping. During the pandemic, container prices exploded. Some increased 3 or 4 times over. Accusations of price fixing circulated. And yet, when the world needed containers the most, these companies were the only ones with the capacity to deliver. You'd think Western companies would see this and rush back into the business. Some tried. Maersk, the Danish shipping giant, owned its own container manufacturing arm for years. It specialized in high-quality refrigerated containers. But in 2024, Maersk attempted to sell the entire division to CIMC. Regulators eventually blocked the sale, citing antitrust concerns. But the message was clear. Even Maersk, one of the largest shipping companies on Earth, didn't want to stay in the container manufacturing game. The margins are razor thin. It's a brutal volume business. And right now, only 3 companies can play at that scale. But here's the twist that few people talk about. The event that truly cemented this monopoly was an environmental regulation. In 2017, the Chinese government mandated a massive industry-wide shift from oil-based paints to water-based coatings to reduce smog and toxic emissions. It was a huge win for public health and the environment. But for container manufacturers, it was a financial earthquake. Water-based paints require completely different production systems, new drying chambers, humidity controls, ventilation systems. The upfront capital costs were enormous. Many smaller Chinese manufacturers simply couldn't afford the upgrade. They went bankrupt. The Big Three, backed by easy access to state loans, upgraded their factories and absorbed the market share left behind. In one policy move, the government didn't just clean the air, it cleared the field. And CIMC is far more than a box company. Next time you board a plane and walk through the jet bridge, there's a good chance it was made by CIMC, one of their subsidiaries. They're one of the largest suppliers of airport passenger boarding bridges in the world. In construction, CIMC pioneered modular building systems. During the pandemic, when Hong Kong needed quarantine facilities built in weeks, CIMC delivered thousands of modular rooms, fully fitted with electricity and plumbing, ready to stack like Lego blocks. They own a German fire truck manufacturer. They build offshore oil rigs. They operate logistics equipment businesses. Containers are just one piece of a sprawling industrial empire. So why doesn't production follow manufacturing as it moves to places like Vietnam or India? On paper, it makes sense. If you're making shoes in Vietnam, why not make the container there too? The answer is scale. A brand new, state-of-the-art factory in Vietnam might produce 100,000 20-foot equivalent units per year. That sounds impressive, until you compare it to CIMC, which can produce nearly 2 million in a single year. Scale isn't just an advantage, it's a moat. And that moat is why 3 companies now quietly control the physical infrastructure of global trade. For all the talk about globalization and free markets, the container industry is a reminder that some sectors don't follow the rules people expect. In theory, high prices and strong demand should attract competitors. In reality, container manufacturing has become one of the most concentrated industrial markets on Earth. And the reasons are brutally simple. Containers are bulky, heavy, low-margin products. A single 40-foot container weighs several tons and sells for a few $1,000s in normal market conditions. That sounds expensive, but when you factor in steel costs, labor, energy, shipping, and depreciation, the margins shrink fast. This isn't software, it's not semiconductors, it's not luxury goods, it's heavy metal boxes with razor-thin profits. To survive, you need massive volume, cheap materials, and a supply chain built around scale. That's exactly what China built over 4 decades. Even if a factory in Europe or the United States could match Chinese labor costs, which they can't, they'd still face a deeper structural problem: geography. China isn't just the world's factory, it's the world's exporter. That means containers are most needed in China, where goods leave the country. If you build containers elsewhere, you still have to ship them to China empty. That's pure cost with no revenue. In logistics, empty miles kill profits. So the rational move for any company is to build containers where the goods are made. And today, that means China. This creates a feedback loop that's almost impossible to break. More manufacturing in China means more containers built in China. More container production in China means lower costs and more dominance. That dominance discourages competitors, pushing even more production back to China. It's industrial gravity. And the 3 giants, CIMC, Dongfang, and CIC, sit at the center of it. But dominance comes with power, and power comes with geopolitical implications. If you think about global trade, shipping companies get most of the headlines: Maersk, Maersk, COSCO. They operate the vessels, control routes, and set freight rates. But without containers, ships are just floating steel hulls. Containers are the standardized language of global trade. Every port, truck, and rail system on Earth is designed around them. Now imagine a world where container production becomes a geopolitical weapon. In a conflict scenario, a country controlling container supply could restrict exports, raise prices, or prioritize certain partners. It wouldn't look like a traditional embargo. It would be a slow squeeze on global logistics. Factories would slow. Retailers would struggle. Inflation would rise. The box is more powerful than it looks. Some governments have started to notice this risk. The United States and Europe have discussed reshoring critical manufacturing. But containers rarely make the list. They're seen as low-tech, commoditized products. The irony is that their simplicity is what makes them indispensable. And then there's the question of whether this monopoly could ever be broken. Technically, yes. Practically, almost no. A new entrant would need billions in capital, guaranteed steel supply, massive factory scale, government support, and long-term contracts with shipping lines. They'd have to operate at a loss for years just to gain market share. And even then, they'd still be shipping empty boxes to Asia. The economics are punishing. That's why even global giants like Maersk walked away. That's why Japan and South Korea ceded the industry decades ago. That's why India and Vietnam haven't seriously challenged China's dominance, despite booming manufacturing sectors. It's not a lack of ambition, it's math, and math favors the incumbents. But the story doesn't end with domination. There's a strange twist to this monopoly. For all their power, these companies are often invisible. People know Apple, Amazon, Tesla. Few people can name a container manufacturer. They don't sell to consumers. They sell to the plumbing of globalization. Yet their impact is everywhere. Every supermarket shelf, every electronic store, every warehouse. Without standardized containers, global trade would collapse back into the chaotic manual loading of the early 20th century. Costs would explode. Supply chains would slow. Globalization as we know it wouldn't exist. In a way, these companies built the physical operating system of the modern world. CIMC's story shows how far this goes. They're not just reacting to trade, they're shaping it. Their modular construction units are used in disaster relief, military bases, and housing projects. Their airport bridges connect billions of passengers to aircraft every year. Their logistics equipment powers ports and warehouses. Dongfang and CICIC quietly supply the backbone of shipping lines that dominate world trade. Together, they are the unseen engineers of globalization. And then, there's the future. Global manufacturing is slowly diversifying. Companies are building factories in Vietnam, India, Mexico, and Eastern Europe. Governments are pushing for supply chain resilience. Geopolitics is fragmenting the world into blocks. In theory, this should shift container production. In reality, it might take decades. Even if manufacturing spreads, China's steel dominance remains. Its industrial clusters are unmatched. Its logistics infrastructure is decades ahead. And the big three container manufacturers continue to invest in automation, efficiency, and scale. They're not standing still. The container industry is also changing technologically. Smart containers with sensors, GPS tracking, and condition monitoring are becoming more common. Refrigerated containers are evolving with better energy efficiency and monitoring systems. Digitalization is creeping into every steel box. And guess who is leading most of that innovation? The same three companies: CIMC, Dongfang, CXIC. Three names stamped on tiny metal plates. Three companies most people have never heard of. And three firms that quietly built the physical framework of the modern global economy.